Okay, let's talk about another really difficult situation in farming families, and one that I, for one, have never ever heard spoken about publicly over here at any conferences or anything. So we're going to tackle it head on, and that is divorce in farming families. Yeah, talk us through your thoughts on this and how you make it as painless as possible for everybody.
I mean, I think again, if at the significant point of someone coming into your family, that's when you talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in one of the things I learned as I got older in family meetings is that I would ask the older generation, if you're unable to care for yourself, where do you want to be? Because I'd been through the situation of having to decide where my mother needed to live when she could no longer care for herself. And it's a terrible thing to have to do.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a great opportunity when I was there to ask the older people, should that ever happen, what did that, so that the rest of the family hear it and it's documented. And I think a bit the same is that instead of being terrified that someone's going to get divorced and take the farm, is to say to, at that meeting, at that pivotal point of change, to say, you know, we're worried. What happens if this relationship doesn't work? And get people to start thinking about it.
Yeah.
You know, and often I can remember interviewing a young couple who, before they were to marry, and I said, you know, what would happen if this relationship, just that exact question, what would happen if this relationship doesn't work? And the young man was the farming inheritor in the future. And he said, oh, I'd look after you. And she said, so what would that look like? And he said, oh, well, I'd set you up in a house in town. She said, your town? Yeah, he said. She said, if we're not together, there's no way I want to be in your town. It was in Sydney actually, I want to be back in Sydney with my own family.
Yeah.
He was stunned that she would want to live in his town. So just creating those opportunities creates the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew that if they were going to get divorced, the $200,000 that was going to buy a house in the rural town was not going to stack up when she wanted the $1.2 million house in the suburb where her parents lived.
Yeah.
So just sort of gently running those conversations is a really important thing. I think I'm not convinced that one of the major elements in younger generation separating from their relationships and ending up in divorce is the alienation they feel from their parents-in-law. And in some families, the extreme measures that families have gone to protect their assets from their in-laws.
Yeah.
You know, if you treat them like an outsider, you shouldn't be surprised when they behave like an outsider.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so once you've had those conversations and, well, hopefully come to some kind of agreement about what would happen, would you encourage people to document that? Would you want it in black and white somewhere?
I actually encourage families, if I had the fabulous opportunity to run a family meeting before any of the next generation were partnered, I encourage them to have an agreement that if someone decided to marry or take a life partner, that they enter into a legal agreement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that becomes part of the family code of conduct, that if you're going to move on to the farm, then we need to have some sort of agreement, or if you're going to marry, we need to have some sort of agreement.
Yeah.
And the younger couple either agree to it or not. I mean, I have run a family meeting where there was a partner absent, and I said it was a girl, would you do you think your partner would agree to an agreement about assets? And she said, well, if he won't, then he shouldn't be my partner. And that's what happened. He wouldn't agree. He's gone.
Yeah, that is such a difficult one, isn't it, though? Because you can imagine, as the incoming partner, as it were, the one that's marrying into the family, you would just be, I don't know, I think I would just be thinking, well, do they think this is going to fail? Do they think we're not right? Do you know, like, I think the communication around that is so difficult, isn't it? Because it really is just protecting the family business, and the fact is that family business has got multiple people within it. So that's the difference, isn't it?
I think that if the family decide before there's any partners that that's going to be the modus operandi, then it's not such a potential insult to partners, you know. And I've heard young men say, well, I've said to my partner, you know, this is an agreement with the family. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah.
I can remember doing a family meeting once and asking it was a daughter-in-law, you know, something about the family. She said, well, the second time he took me out, he said, could you see yourself living on a farm? And she said, oh, I don't know why. He said, well, that's where I'm going to be. And if you can't see yourself there, we shouldn't waste any more time.
I know somebody else that's done that. I know somebody, in fact, that might have been my dad. It might have been my dad that did that to my mum. I've heard that story before. Oh, God. Yeah. Well, I mean, that gets it out of the way. You can't complain about that communication, can you? Bloody hell.
No.
Yeah.
And if you think you can live on a farm, we've got an agreement that we have to sort out what's going to happen if we divorce before we marry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting, your point, though. I did some work here for a woman who was in not a dissimilar situation to you. And I said the same things that I'm saying now. And she agreed, yeah, that was a good idea. And then she actually ended up in a relationship with a farmer. And they asked her to enter into an agreement, and something that she thought was a great idea when it didn't affect her suddenly became an insult, exactly as you've said. She said, do they think I'm not right? Do they think I'm going to go? Do they think I'm trying to rip them off? You know, that.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've just got to have the skills to move forward from those situations.
And
if it puts you off enough, maybe you're not right.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there definitely is that. And I think it's a case of it's trying to, like you said earlier, it's about trying to make that partner that's marrying him feel included. Yes, all right, there's an agreement, and that's for the sake of the finances of the business, but that doesn't mean they're an outsider, does it? Do you know what I mean? You've got to move past that and include them in the business and what's going on. So yeah.
And as those significant changes happen, you know, if you start to be involved in the business, then how does that affect the agreement? You know, it has to affect the agreement.
Absolutely.
If I'm contributing more, then the agreement